The cameras were already live when the tone of the interview shifted. What had been billed as a routine discussion about entrepreneurship began to feel more like a trial. Viewers at home watched as a confident black business leader, known for transforming a small startup into one of the country's fastest-growing tech firms, sat beneath the bright studio lights. Across the sleek glass desk, the TV host's voice sharpened with each question. Millions were expected to attend an inspiring conversation about innovation and opportunity. Instead, they sensed tension creeping into the air. Subtle remarks began to question the man's background and suggest that his achievements were the product of chance rather than skill. The entrepreneur didn't flinch. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged worried glances. None of them could have predicted that in the next few minutes, one calm and deliberate reply would ignite a nationwide conversation about race, respect, and what genuine opportunity really means. Darius Cole grew up in a part of the city often described as forgotten. His mother worked long shifts at the hospital, and his father repaired cars from their garage. From the age of 12, Darius spent late nights at a public library computer teaching himself basic programming. By his college years, he had built a small app to help local shops manage inventory. That idea evolved into a business-to-business software platform now used by thousands of small firms across the country. Despite his achievements, Darius often encountered subtle barriers. He noticed that at investor meetings, people often asked about his background before inquiring about his business model. At conferences, he was sometimes introduced as a surprising success story, a description that always carried an unspoken undertone, as if his success were unexpected for someone who looked like him. When the producers of a national morning news program invited him for a live interview about entrepreneurship, he agreed. He hoped his journey would inspire young people from under-resourced neighborhoods to pursue careers in technology and business. The studio that day was bright, its polished floor reflecting the overhead lights. Behind the curved glass desk sat the host, a seasoned broadcaster known for probing interviews and crisp on-air delivery. At first, the discussion was straightforward. The early days of his company, the challenges of raising capital, and the importance of mentoring the next generation. But as the minutes passed, the tone shifted. Questions about his strategies gave way to remarks about whether his success had been due to government programs or special treatment. The conversation began to feel less like an exploration of ideas and more like a quiet interrogation of his legitimacy. Viewers at home sensed the unease building. Darius kept his posture steady, his hands resting lightly on the edge of the glass desk. The host leaned forward with a smile that didn't quite reach the eyes and asked whether his company's early investors had backed him primarily as a diversity opportunity. The implication lingered in the air that the merit of his work was somehow secondary. The audience in the studio grew quiet. Some camera operators shifted their weight uneasily behind the rigs. The host pressed further, citing national statistics about business ownership and hinting that stories like Darius's were rare exceptions rather than signs of progress. In that moment, social media feeds lit up. Viewers watching from home began posting clips, many expressing discomfort with the tone. Some wondered aloud why successful people from underrepresented backgrounds were so often asked to justify their presence instead of being celebrated for their accomplishments. Still, Darius didn't rush to answer. His calm composure became a counterweight to the insinuations. He let the questions come, acknowledging them with a polite nod but giving little reaction. Behind the scenes, a producer gestured to another, uncertain whether to cut to a commercial break. The director shook his head. The exchange had become compelling, the kind of television moment that could not be staged. Minutes passed this way, with the host probing and the guest listening, the tension building like a drawn bow. Every viewer at home could feel it. The camera occasionally caught Darius glancing briefly toward the lens, as if inviting the public to witness the subtext. By the time the host remarked that Darius's rise was inspiring but unusual, the sense of discomfort had grown palpable. For some watching, the moment carried echoes of long-held assumptions that success by a black entrepreneur was an anomaly rather than evidence of capability, and then came the statement that would set the stage for the turning point. The host concluded a line of questioning by saying, with a half-smile, "Perhaps you're an outlier, a story we can admire, but not one that can be easily repeated." The studio fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the lights. Darius shifted slightly forward in his chair, his voice calm but firmer than before. He began by recounting how his platform had helped thousands of small businesses, many in neighborhoods where banks had historically denied loans or venture capital was scarce. He described entrepreneurs who had hired locally, built sustainable income, and shown that given access to tools, innovation flourished anywhere. Then he addressed the implication head-on. He said that labeling someone like him as an outlier revealed less about those striving for success and more about the assumptions that persisted in the culture. Assumptions that quietly discouraged investors from looking in specific directions and caused promising talent to be overlooked. The camera zoomed in as he explained that every time a black founder achieved success, it was treated as a surprise, reinforcing a narrative of limitation rather than potential. He challenged that narrative, insisting that opportunity was not bound by race, only by access and support. The host, who had been guiding the conversation with practiced confidence, hesitated. For the first time in the segment, words didn't come immediately. He glanced at his notes, then back at Darius, his expression less sure. Viewers watching at home felt the shift. What had started as a tense interview had become a candid moment of truth. Clips of Darius's measured but unyielding response spread quickly online, with hashtags calling for equal access to capital and representation trending nationwide. Commentators praised not only his words, but the way he delivered them, without anger, without insult, yet with undeniable conviction. For many, it was the clarity of that calm response that made the moment unforgettable. When the segment finally wrapped, the studio remained unusually quiet. The host thanked Darius, acknowledging the importance of the conversation. Crew members who had stood silently behind the cameras nodded in respect as Darius left the set. By that evening, clips of the exchange were featured on national newscasts. Editorials highlighted the interview as a turning point in how the media covers race and entrepreneurship. Business leaders began sharing their own experiences, many of whom admitted that unconscious bias had influenced their hiring and investment decisions. Darius received thousands of messages from young entrepreneurs who said they felt seen and encouraged. Some wrote that they had been on the verge of giving up on their ideas but now felt renewed determination. Leaders in the tech and finance industries publicly committed to examining their practices for fairness and inclusion. In the days that followed, the host addressed the audience again, acknowledging that the questions asked had missed a larger point. That opportunity is often limited not by ability, but by barriers that can be removed. For Darius, the moment was more than a televised confrontation. It became an opportunity to move the conversation forward, demonstrating that the power to change perceptions often lies not in louder arguments, but in steady, principled responses. Weeks later, as the clip continued to circulate, many viewers reflected on a simple question. If one composed answer on live television could challenge old assumptions so powerfully, what more could be achieved if more people were given the platform and the respect to tell their stories?